I'm doing pretty good.
You had a great night last night.
I'm glad you were there. Thank you.
It was a special evening. It was to see that movie in the Dolby with that crowd.
For me, it was exciting because it was the first time most of the cast had seen it.
And is it the first time most of the cast were together?
Yes, yes. I mean, we tried to have them work together as much as possible, and we wanted to record it. The trick was to try to get this thing to feel as much like a live action film as you could,
right.
Even though, I mean, literally every shot was animated.
Except one.
One, that's right.
Are you going to tell me which one?
There's one shot that was photographed, but everything else was generated.
What's the one shot?
I got to let people see the movie.
I was trying to figure it out last night.
Did you? What's your guess?
One person in my office said they think it was just the opening shot.
Okay.
There was another shot. It was something with rocks, I remember. I'm like, that has to be it. But then you're like, but the next shot comes and you're like, no, that's it.
But by the way, how cool is it that you have to work so hard to figure it out? But I also wanted to draw attention to the fact that there was, every single, the technology. People talk about the technology. It's such a human endeavor. There's so many artists creating the lighting, building each rock, each asset, and then putting all of that together. And then being photographed by Caleb Deschanel, and giving it that feeling that it's so, and all their tracks are invisible. It's like a Zen rock garden, So all their work is meant to just make their work disappear, and it looks so naturalistic that. And I just wanted people to know, because people might assume that some of the stuff is plates that we shot, and then just put characters into it.
Right.
But really, there were hundreds of artists working for years.
Do you know how many people worked on the movie?
This one, I would say it's in the hundreds. It's definitely, many continents. We had, a lot. We recorded a lot, and did a lot of research in Africa. Of course, a lot of the music with Lebo M. In Asia, a lot of the work was done. In Europe, MPC was based in London.
Who's tracking all this stuff?
In the States here. Yeah, that's really part of the, you have about 1,400 shots, and every one of them, and we have to design all the characters, every bug, every blade of grass. And what's so fascinating is with the tools that are available and things like, not to get too geeky about it, but there's all sorts of fur sims that we develop, and the ray tracing, the way that light reflects off of different objects and bounces onto others. All of these basically, simulations that are that you require programming, artistry, and very powerful computers to do. And some of those shots could be like like 150 hours per frame, 24 frames per second, because it requires that much processing power. And so much goes into it. And what's so nice is when you watch it with a crowd, it's just all that goes away, and you just feel like you're looking at something that could be a BBC documentary.
Truly is. I mean, there were, like, I was looking at the bugs, the first bug, and the noise of the bug.
Yeah, that's.
It was real. It was like Nat Geo.
Yeah, Skywalker sound. That's
wow.
They're just, again, artists, people, humans building these things and creating this illusion.
So tell me about the day you sat down, or someone came to you and said, you know what, there's this classic movie called The Lion King, and I think I want to remake it.
Well, we had such a great team together, and I learned so much over the course of Jungle Book. Right. And I finally kind of figured out how to do it by the end. Like, it took the whole process to really be comfortable with all this technology. And all of this new technology was coming online because all of this consumer-facing VR hardware was now becoming available, and game engines were becoming so robust also, like real-time renders. And so we started, as we were finishing up Jungle Book, we started to bring in gear to test it out, and you realize that all the stuff that had been traditionally done with expensive, very specialized tools like the motion capture tech that James Cameron developed for Avatar, we were still using a lot of that stuff on Jungle Book, and that was 10 years later. But here, all this new stuff was coming out, and we decided to try to build a software suite that was essentially a multiplayer VR filmmaking game that allowed all of us to pop on the headsets and be in these virtual environments that we created. And so the whole beginning of the process was like an animated film. We had a story department, storyboards, animatics, recorded the voices of the actors, created like a a show reel that you could watch the film in pencil. And if you look at any of like the DVD extras on a Pixar movie, it was essentially that, right? Like if you look at The Incredibles, that's a really good. By the way, if you want to learn about animation, looking at the Incredibles extras is really quite illuminating. But at a certain point in animation, you go into layout, which is where you start to set the cameras and the lights and the character choreography, basically just on a computer using a mouse and splines, what they call, for the camera moves. You program everything. But that's where we departed. We had this movie that was animated within a game engine. So, all human animators and all digitally rendered environments. And then we brought the whole live action film crew into the animated film. And so we were all there in the Pride Lands looking at the lions next to us, figuring out where the camera should go. And then we created tools that could interface with that VR environment. So we had dollies and we had cranes and wheels. And so if you came to our stage, you would see no lights, but you would see, like I said, dolly track, cranes. You would see script supervisor, assistant directors, camera operators, dolly grips, set dressers, everything you'd see. So we inherited the culture of a live action film and the aesthetic of a live action film. And having Caleb Deschanel, who's not, has not worked on effects films before, in there setting lights, explaining to the people at the computers where the lights should go, and in VR space with us, scouting as we would on a tech scout and setting where the camera position should be, and then operating the camera that was moving the camera inside the virtual world. And we would generate dailies from that, give it to the editor, and we would cut together the movie as though we had filmed it in live action.
But what made you say Lion King? I want to do Lion King.
I knew with the tools that we had and what the technology had to offer, and the team that had done such a great job on Jungle Book, that there was an opportunity here to show the naturalism of that world. I kind of understood how to make animals act and talk through animation. I understood how to direct animation too, because there were some sequences in Jungle Book that didn't have Mowgli in them.
Right.
And those scenes were completely CG. And I was comfortable directing the animators, and then I said, well, what if we just, we did it with Jungle Book. What if you just pulled the one human out of Jungle Book? Right. How would you do that? And so we no longer required sets, and we no longer required lights.
It's crazy.
But you had also nothing to cut to. Having Mowgli's face to cut to really grounded that film.
Right.
If you pull that out, you have nothing to hide behind. You have no reference to compare things to. And so we really, it was a bit of a leap of faith. But because Lion King has such emotional resonance, is such a timeless myth, it has such amazing music and so many great roles, and so much anticipation, too, because people are so connected to it, especially the generation, the next generation younger than me. I'm a Gen Xer.
Yep.
The millennials, that was one of those movies that was on loop in the backseat of a minivan. So part of it is it's a great opportunity, but it's also a great responsibility.
Right.
Because it's an important property for Disney, so you want to make sure you don't mess that up, because you get one crack at it.
Yeah.
And you want to make a great movie. You want to do the best you can, and you have all these actors that trust you, who've jumped on board, taken a leap. But you have this audience that you're talking about that feel incredibly connected to it. And I felt that, I understand that relationship from Marvel. I understand that relationship working on a Star Wars project now, The Mandalorian. But from an emotional standpoint, Lion King has a very deep, the audience has a very deep relationship with it, because it deals with very strong themes and extremely emotional plot points. And I don't want to, I guess everybody's seen it, I don't want to spoil it, but it deals with loss, it deals with fear.
Your version seems much darker than the original.
Well, it's people call it live action. You should say it's photoreal animation, but there is something about you're seeing something that looks real happening in front of you, and there's a certain distance that the stylization of 2D animation, both in the performances, the comedy, the tone, but there's more of a distance, as the illusion that you're seeing something actually happening, definitely creates a different context. And that's part of why I wanted to get Caleb because Caleb, just looking at the Black Stallion,
Right.
so much is done by composition, lighting, what's suggested, and we knew that you couldn't just put the camera right there on everything, but you had to create that feeling. And with Caleb's photography and Hans Zimmer's music, that score, it creates the whole and the memory of the audience too.
Right.
That
Right.
you could allude to things much more subtly. So if you actually look shot for shot, we're actually showing quite a bit less.
Well, that's
the
what I was going
overall
to ask
effect.
you. It's not a shot-for-shot movie, but a lot of it is the same. How do you decide, like, what do you keep from the original, and where do you veer off from that?
Yeah, and so that's everybody's got their own formula, and I'm not saying this is the way you do it, but it's the way I've done it. Because you want people, especially with a film like this, you don't want to reinvent it completely. You want people to see it and be able to say, "I saw The Lion King." Just like when I went to see the play. I went to see the play, and I had seen the movie, and I said, "I saw The Lion King." Now the play is an hour longer and has different songs, different scenes, but somehow it captured the essence of the film. And you would casually say it's the same exact story.
Right.
And that was a goal here, is like, how could we make it feel casually as though you saw the same thing?
Right.
But then as you examine it, ours is, we're almost a half hour longer than the original film. There's a lot of scenes that weren't there. There's dimensionalizing characters. All the comedy is different. But the way I figure out what you could change and can't change is I use memory as a tool for to understand what I should prioritize. In other words, we organize our memories based on relevance.
Right.
So
Because I saw the original writers get character credits for Your Lion King. Like, how do you figure that out?
well, that's Disney. Disney figures that out. Because the original was an animated production, so they have. We definitely wanted to make sure that we gave very prominent credit to them, because this film, you can't separate this from what came before.
Right.
It's very much a reflection of that, and hopefully a respectful and accurate one. And the filmmakers who were involved with the original production.
I spoke to the original directors last night.
They were very helpful and collaborative, and really cared deeply that we did a good job, because it reflects on what it's part of the legacy of what they've created. Right. So there's that responsibility too. You were talking about different responsibilities.
You took on a lot of responsibility.
It was a lot. It was a lot, and I know what it feels like too, from having done the first Iron Man movie, and now, the MCU has continued on with other filmmakers and with Kevin Feige overseeing all that. And I know how grateful I am when I'm included when people know that I care and invite me to be a part of it, and when they do a great job with it and expand upon what I've done, because it just it would feel really, I don't know, even though it's all fictitious characters, you feel like they're real. And how Endgame, I think, closed the circle on that whole Tony Stark arc, made me feel really happy and proud. And though who knows how I would have chosen, what path I would have chosen, but to know that the Russo brothers really thought it through and did such a fantastic job made me feel a tremendous sense of gratitude and relief that the character that Tony had been looked after.
Right.
And so I felt that. Now here I am coming into something that people have lived with for 25 years, that had meant so much to people's childhoods. You wanted to make sure that we got that right. And so just to answer your question, I make a list in the beginning of what things I remember from the original.
Oh, got it.
Right? And so for something like Iron Man, the list might be short, or Jungle Book, it might be a couple songs or a few scenes, or Mowgli with a torch, or the Kaa hypnotizing Mowgli. Something like Lion King, that's a very long list. And the more things that are on that list that I make, before I go back and watch it again, this is just from memory. So you think the Circle of Life, the Stampede, which songs mean the most to you, what image from each song, what character, what line of dialogue, what joke. And then that becomes the priority list. And then you watch the movie and you realize there's so much stuff that you don't remember. It's different than you remember. And so for something like Circle of Life, it's almost shot for shot. Stampede, Mufasa falling from the cliff, all those things. Spoiler, I should say spoiler alert for people who don't know.
You're okay.
Who don't know. But there's other things like what really happens in when you're with Timon and Pumbaa, the jokes, the humor. Can You Feel the Love Tonight? The song people remember, but the imagery is totally different.
Right.
And we've added scenes and storylines and things like that. And I think, I think worked out well is that when people look at it, they assume that we basically took the same script and they did the same thing. But as people see this one, especially the generation that really understands the first one, and I got a glimpse of that with Donald to some extent, but Chance the Rapper.
He's like Mr. Lion King.
And he's Mr. Lion King, and Donald like brought him by, and I was curious about him, and he came in and he was like our millennial Lion King Sherpa who knew every twist and turn, every line when I'd show him footage. And he also knows music, and he's also very, just extremely talented and current and thoughtful and smart. And so that he cared enough, like first it was just to show him, but then seeing how him and his friends would react to sequences, and I would just grill them about, like, do you see what we did there, how we changed it? Yeah, no, is that okay? No, that's cool, that's good. So it would always be like me checking with him. He was almost like a technical advisor. Right. So you had like Hans Zimmer, who was there from the beginning, who could speak to the legacy of the original, and also not afraid of change in the future. Right. And he's a bit of an unsung mentor and hero through this process beyond just the music, because he was the guy, he's the phone call I'd make to say, all right, could we include this new thing? Could we, does this piece of music fit into how could we adjust this to make it fit with what you're doing? And never afraid of change, but always cognizant of how it felt from somebody who could speak with authority about what the true essence of the original production was.
So you get Beyonce.
Yeah.
Do you give her notes? How do you direct Beyonce?
Beyonce is first of all, extremely hardworking. That's everybody knows about the talent. Everybody knows about the experience, the prolific career, filmmaking, putting shows on, dancing, choreography, singing, understanding how the culture is affected by the arts and vice versa. But at the end of the day, a work ethic that ultimately, and I wish that people understood how much hard work goes into something that seems to be just like it's naturally handed down to her. She works very hard. She was extremely prepared and comes to it with a very open, collaborative energy. And somebody who has, and she's such a student because now she directed Homecoming and very intimately involved with things like Lemonade and her stage shows and albums and writing. And so it requires a certain mindfulness and attentiveness. And so, it was clear to me why she's so creative, because she's curious. When, we had all the tech set up. So when we would record, we'd either have like a black box theater where people would record together and actually walk around and not really act it out for behavior, but just as reference for people to understand the performances, the animators to see what they're doing. But I would have them overlap and improvise. It was like a theater rehearsal.
And you saw Beyonce doing this. Are you like?
And so, well, with Beyonce it was different because Beyonce often would, remember she was having kids throughout this process and then touring and doing albums. So she's the hardest working person in showbiz.
Right.
But when she would show up, she would have done rehearsed takes and brought recordings and done versions of a song and tried this or that and then record with me. So she clearly did a lot of homework going into it. And then, of course, a lot of conversations about it.
When she brought you Spirit, did she bring you different versions, or did she bring you this? That's it.
That was, she played it. And it was, first of all, when Beyonce plays a song for you and then Beyonce's sitting there with you. And we're all there, like the film people are there and the music people are all sort of coming together. And she says, and also she's very, there's one persona for on stage, and then there's a persona for when you're collaborating, and just she's a mom and she's an artist. She's has a totally different energy than what you see when in a stage show.
Right.
I think people always assume that she makes such an impression there, and she they play the song like, I hope do you mind if I play? And I would show her stuff too. I'd say, hey, here's what we came up with the choreography for this fight, and here's something I adjusted here, and take a look at this, and we use this line of dialogue of yours. So it was very collaborative, not just with her, but with everybody. Whenever somebody would come by, take them through the tech, they'd put on they'd go into VR, they would see what we're doing, they would show them the latest cut of the scene, and then she played for us Spirit, and it was it didn't even require any eye contact with anybody. Everybody was just blown away, and she played it, and then I think what I said was, do you mind playing that again? And we played it again, and because you want to say, am I just digging this because she's here? I'm here with Beyonce, or she's playing the song for me. Is that affecting my read? Am I being objective enough? And it's like, no, these lyrics are good. This works. And then they start playing with it. Say, let's play with it against the picture. Let's see how this fits into what we have here. And it just and then of course having, Hans Zimmer and Lebo, who helped bring, because if you hear the version within the film, there's a lot that they collaborated with to help make it fit into the flow and tone of the movie. So it's a great song as it stands alone, but in the film you'll see it's Lebo singing with a choir that brings it in, and the part that you use, and it's something I really look forward to. And with Hans Zimmer, it's like he was very much a proponent of it, saying this is good to update, and it helps, because you're looking for opportunities to adjust and change things, but you don't want to do something that somehow takes away from or undermines people's expectations of what they grew up with. And this was a really good opportunity to do that.
You did an amazing job. Billy and Seth. We got to get them on a road show together. They have to have like Disney Plus shows coming out.
They have to. I mean, they're just so good, and it makes me just proud because everybody here's my first choice. You know what I mean? These guys are my first choice, and I knew this is a part that's a little less mysterious to me than the music, because I come from comedy, I come from improv, and I had also seen them. I knew them both separately. I think I saw them on Billy on the Street together just to see how if they clicked, and then I knew that they were also writers, and Donald's also a writer. Many people might not. He was a writer on 30 Rock. Yeah. I mean, that writer's room is not a precious environment. It is you got to work hard and, have 10 ideas, and you're on the clock, and you're all in a room full of other really funny, smart people. And so I really, of course, Donald's great singer and great performer, filmmaker, but his comedy roots is what really got me excited as both a performer and writer. And so having these three guys who are all writer/performers, it created a little bit of more of a, like an incubator of ideas. And also with comedy people, they are tireless. They will keep doing it, keep trying to plus it. So they would come up with stuff. We would edit it together. I'd set it against either pencils or later picture, and bring them back in to look at it. And I never said it's done. It was as many times as they wanted to try to plus it, we would do it. And I also, tried to create an environment where they could do improv. And so it felt like an improv workshop. We had them wearing microphones, we had boom mics, but ultimately it was, just a black box theater, like a theater rehearsal. We would use the written lines in the script. We would have Jeff, the writer would be there, Jeff Nathanson, and he'd throw lines out, I'd throw lines out. We tried again. We had some scenes with them with J.D. McCreary. We'd have some scenes with just the two of them. Sometimes they would come back alone and just try to record a few things to picture. And so it got into that. We hit enough of the jokes people remember from the old one, because there were a few that people really remembered, but a lot of it was just them having this great relationship and improvising, and a lot of jokes that just were thrown away. And it was so nice to watch it in a full theater last night, because everything that they said hit. And I know that they felt that they had big shoes to fill, because in the original film it's so memorable. Nathan Lane and Isabella do so, but it didn't feel like the right tone for this look, and so a lot of that changed more significantly than, let's say, Mufasa's monologues. The comedy in 25 years, comedy changes a bit, and also this photoreal look, I think, warranted a different tone of comedy. And so I was very proud of them, and I was so happy for them when the room was just, when they were tearing the house down. And I just felt relieved and happy for them. And, again, you're not just trying to do a good job in a movie, you're trying to do a good job in a movie in context of a wonderful performance that came before you. It's like replacing somebody in a Broadway show. It's not in a vacuum.
Right.
The same thing with Chiwetel. You had Jeremy Irons before that, an extremely memorable performance, but then Chiwetel to bring his version of it and have people react so well to it. And I felt like everybody were appreciated for what they did in it.